So, okay, perhaps you will quit smoking, you're going to end up with diabetes. That's not very sustainable, right? So, what can you do? You have to replace something that gives you pleasure with something else that gives you pleasure, because it has to give you pleasure, but it is sustainable. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to interrupt a behavior that you had that you didn't like? For example, laziness, procrastination, negativity, cursing, all these things that you said, that's not me. That's not what I am. Or perhaps you're talking about bad habits, like, for example, drinking too much, booze, of course, or uh, eating too much, or using drugs, or watching too much TV, or gambling. All these addictions that you want absolutely get rid of once and for all. And you start saying, okay, that's it. Start, very well motivated. And then after just a few days, you say, that's not me. And what happens then? You're going to feel guilty. You're going to feel ashamed of yourself. You're going to think you're too weak. You're not weak. It's not weakness. I went through that too. And I know what it's like. And it's a very oppressing shame. And of course, your self-esteem and the consideration that you have of yourself just plummets. It's natural. Well, I'll tell you what, you're not weak. It's not a question of weakness. Everybody, anybody that goes through this, no, none of these persons are really weak. They just don't know what really is going on in their mind. It's all about your mind. And the stronger your addiction was to a behavior or a vice, for example, or a bad habit, the stronger it was, the stronger is the pattern, neural pattern that you develop in your mind. And just goodwill will not do it. Nobody can succeed at that. You must understand what goes on in your mind. Yeah, you must understand the dynamics. Now, consider this. There is no such thing as vacuum, as void in nature. Doesn't exist. I remember my science classes very long time ago. And I remember my teacher, professor, that took us to the lab, and there was this bell, this glass bell, from which you could take out all the air and create a vacuum inside that bell. Now, I said that in nature there is no void, there is no vacuum, there is no emptiness, but you can recreate it artificially. Now, what happens? What's the air pressure of the bell once you have taken out all the air? Zero, no pressure whatsoever. Outside the bell, on the other hand, we have roughly 1 atmosphere. Okay? Now, this will stay like that until these two systems will remain separated. However, all it takes, they didn't show this at the science class, if you drill even a small little hole in the glass, the air that is outside is going to push against the walls of it always had, but at that point it finds a little hole, a little passage where it will go through in order to take air inside the bell. And this process will go on for as long as the pressure inside the bell is lower than the pressure outside. Once they reach the same pressure, okay, then there's no need for air to go into the bell anymore because there is pressure. This state is called homeostasis. That's because nature cannot stand that void. It's not in nature, vacuum, void, whatever you want to call it. So our mind works the same way. If you try to get rid of a bad habit, you want to take away a bad habit or a bad behavior that you have from your mind, what happens? You create a vacuum in your mind. And your mind cannot tolerate it because it's nature. So what will your mind try to do? It will do anything to put something inside that void. And that's why most people fail into getting rid of a habit. And that's just the point. Because they try to get rid of an habit. That was the problem. You cannot get rid of everything because once you get rid of something, you create a vacuum, you create a void, and the mind will want to, well, fill up that void. So what do you have to do? You must choose to fill that void. If you leave things as they are, be certain your mind will find the alternative, and it's not a good one. Perhaps you have, if you're a non-smoker, or if you're a smoker and you tried to quit, you probably found yourself eating candies or chewing gums, right? Why? Because you're trying to fill that void. That's what you're trying to do. You don't have the nicotine or whatever element that is in the cigarette or the tobacco that gives you pleasure. That's the key word. It gives you pleasure. And once you take away that pleasure, you're gonna feel a lack. So you try to feel to fill a lack with a candy, which is sugar, and sugar gives you pleasure. So you try artificially to fix that hole, but it won't work, or it will for as long as you eat candies and chewing gums. It doesn't create side effects. Okay. So this is the point. So how can you do that? For example, if you always like to read, reading is okay. You want to study a new matter, you study the matter, the subject if you want. You want to go back to university, for example, because you wanted to. So if you study, it's not something heavy because it gives you pleasure, because you feel you're more knowledgeable in something that you always wanted to know and to do in your life. Or perhaps you want to go out and run, right? Getting up early in the morning. Okay, it's not easy the first time because when we are used to pleasure, to having constant pleasure coming into our body very easily, it's very hard to take new habits that do not immediately give you pleasure. As a matter of fact, they give you pain. Because if you've always woke up late in the morning, okay, because you had all the time to sleep, that was pleasurable. Now you have to wake up, say, 2 or 3 hours before. That's going to create pain. But if you force yourself in doing something that is pleasant for you, or that it's going to get pleasant, as a matter of fact, after 1 month, perhaps even less, you will want to get up in the morning early and go to run, because you have created that void that you had was filled with something new that gives you a new kind of pleasure, but which is sustainable. Or perhaps meditating or cooking or painting. All these hobbies that you can start doing. Going out and see people. Change job. Okay, all these things are new habits that you acquire, that give you pleasure, and that most important are sustainable. That's the key word, sustainable. So you don't stop eating bad things and then drinking alcohol. That's not replacing something good with something bad with good. It's bad with bad. It has to be sustainable. The other fundamental thing is your internal dialogue. The way what you say to yourself about this new habit that you want to gain, that you want to develop in yourself. But first and foremost, you have to recreate in yourself through the dialogue a new image of yourself, because the one that you had before, when you were having bad habits, it sucked. I mean, the image of yourself was not good. Otherwise, you wouldn't have wanted to quit it. because you would see yourself like a drunkard, lazy, fat. You didn't like that image, and that's why you wanted to change it. So now you have to reinforce that image, not the bad image. You have to replace it and reinforce it with a new one. So you see yourself as being healthy, in control, powerful. That's what you need. That's the kind of image. So every time you succeed, every day that passes without you getting back to that habit reinforces that image. Don't take it for granted, but create an internal dialogue with that. I am a strong person because I was able to quit for a week. I never thought I could do that. And then for 2 weeks, and then for 3 weeks, then a month, 2 months, 6 months. This internal dialogue, because remember that whatever you say creates an image within yourself. Remember that, that's very important. So if you say, I'm great, I can achieve things, I can do things, and you see it in your mind what you can do, what you have done, what you have created, the more knowledge that you've acquired, the fitter that you look, all these things contribute to fill that void. So even at the very start, even if you don't see results, you can still create a positive image by saying, I decided to start a new life, and I love it, and I can do it. And you see yourself being successful. So it really doesn't matter if it's at the start or sometime after. Now, the internal dialogue and the images that you create in your mind are very strong, or very powerful. And with that, you fill the void, you fill the vacuum. Until you reach, as you say, I grow and grow. Let's say your image, the ideal image of yourself is here, and day by day, you actually become getting closer and closer and closer to the image that you wanted for yourself. And when you get to that image, you reach a state of homeostasis, like for the bell. Remember? At that point, what happens? You grow, you create a new image of yourself, and you follow and you follow. I mean, you always have to follow an image, so you never go above your image. You cannot do that because you have nowhere to look up to. So you need that image to look up to. So you create it and you increase it always more. That's how it works. That's how you create a new habit, and you kill any void in your life, whatever that is. Even a loved one that for some reason you lost. You have to create an alternative, a new image, a new something new. Find a new partner or find a new whatever. Don't stay in a state of lack, and do it in a sustainable way. So don't just look for anybody and have wild sex with everybody just because you have to feel a lack. That's not sustainable. Okay? But start creating that image and your inner dialogue. See you next time.